¿Me ayudas con una música? Hola, muy buenos días a todos.
Good morning to everyone. New session, inspiration session, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today. A very special greeting to all of you who have been following our growth program, Growing Together in the Americas. And for the rest of the network of the Connect Americas Women, welcome as well. Before we start, we want to remind you we have simultaneous interpretation, translation. In the lower part of your screen, you can choose English, Spanish, or Portuguese, so you can follow the conversation we will have today. Additionally, to giving you welcome, I want to introduce you to our guest for today. Our guest is Cristina Vélez. Those who are in Colombia probably have heard her name. She is the head of the AFIC school, administration school. She has a PhD in administration with some organizational studies, but she has also been secretary for women in Bogotá. So those who work with gender issues have heard about her in different situations and moments. It is great to have you here, Cristina, with us. Thank you very much for your time, for accepting our invitation, and to all of you who are tuning in today. I really wish you will enjoy it a lot. And without anything else, the space is yours. Thank you very much, Daniela, for this generous presentation and for inviting me to the space. I think that obviously, whenever the purpose is to inspire people at a meeting, these things really make me very nervous. I feel I have a gigantic responsibility to really reach this goal, effectively moving something in you. So I hope that today we will be able to talk, and I know it's difficult in this way virtually, but I will make it some questions during the talks you can answer through the chat, so we will have some interaction. And if maybe of you can leave this meeting with some questions and ideas on how we can have a greater inclusion within our organizations and our enterprises. As Daniela was saying, right now, I am a dean of the administration school. For those who are not in Colombia, this is a private university in Medellin, started as a business school 62 years ago, and it has been growing. It's a great university with music, engineership, all the careers, and humanists. But the school, the administration is still going on. And I think that what our director is wanting to reach is to transform the university through this teletransfer communication processes so we can start making the right questions. So one of the reasons why I ended up here not only because of the experience I had with the subjects and the formation I had in administration. I have been teaching all my life, even as I was a women's secretary in Bogotá. I was still a teacher. I think that's one of the few things I have been carrying along in my bag since more than 15 years. But I wanted to put on the table these discussions on gender, and I wanted to show you this first slide because even though I had coming these things along of having leading sexual and feminine rights, I had been really an activist in these subjects. This is what happened 15 days to me. And I say this happened to me because it was a small scandal within the school because we made a panel where there were only men. And this happened, it had to pass through five men, the teacher who was organizing, the academic team who had organized the questions. It went through the design team who made this. We realized we had organized uh, something, and the message here is not only what grandmother said that this happens in the best families, but it's also putting on the table the discussion. How can we talk about diversity within enterprises? This is a never-ending task. We will be always opening a new border, and if we are really willing to ask ourselves these question, which will be coming back forever, permanently. So today I want to speak to you about 6 things. I would like to show you a reference of the ODS, which is like a must whenever we speak to an issue related to inclusion and sustainability. So we can check out some ciphers which have been selected and cured because the discussion on inclusion can be eternal and we can see all kinds of data. I would like to see some discussions, a small one on Colombia. And sorry for those who are not in Colombia, but I think this is a case which is applicable to the rest of the hemisphere. And speaking also of the discussion on organizations, and I would like to leave 3 questions, put them on the table, 2 great conclusions and 3 questions. Do you know what the ODS are? This is really known. This is very common to everyone. This is like the, the, the setting to act within countries and enterprises. This is an exercise which involves many actors and organizations that have been working on to have a better planet, a sustainable planet, and we would find 17 working aspects. One of those, number 5, is focused on gender equality. And one of the beautiful things of the ODS is that it has differentiated goals for different countries. So what the USA needs to reach is different to what Ecuador needs to reach, different to Angola or China. So it's a context-based and adaptable principle to the needs and capacities of the different countries in the world. Nevertheless, beyond this clarification, it has a common north and some fronts where everyone has to work on. We need to end all discrimination. We need to manage to validate, at least in the primary education, we need to find differences between regions and countries. And we also need to understand how sexual reproductive rights and the access to economic resources are fundamental so we can part to have any discussion on gender. And why are these norms important? Because the global situation is really worrying. For every dollar, let's say, or 100 on it, a man is earning 70 cents is being earned by women. One from each 3 women has experienced some kind of physical or sexual violence. Here, 107 women are tuned in. We would say that statistically 32 of the women who are joining us today has some kind of physical or sexual violence. And if we go wider with this violence or other kinds of discrimination, I'm sure all of you with us would have a story to tell. And only 13% of women owners of land on the earth are owners of land. Latin America is doing better than this global percentage, but it's one of the root issues. And I would like to tell you that one of the few studies that we can find in the world, what is preventing violence within families, and this is led by Julieta Demetre, today leading the HEP in Colombia, is that the fact that a woman has a title of property on her home or a title of property share or of herself is the only factor which really will reduce the violence within the home. If I'm comparing two homes which are identical, but in one of them, a title of property of the home is shared in the couple or it's for the woman, there are less possibilities, there will be intra-domestic violence. There are 750 million of women, girls in the world who got married before the age of 18. The third part of the countries in the world has only reached the basic education. And here I need to clarify something. The percentage in Latin America is that women have a longer education than other countries. If we see at the amount of years we have studied men and women in Latin America have a slighter, longest time. In Colombia, this is 1 year more or less, but this is not being translated in greater incomes or possibilities in Latin America. And in other countries, it's only women reach the basic education. Within these countries, there are some regions where this is still happening. So of course, if we do a percentage between the rural areas and the cities are pulling up many of these cycles, but we still have spaces within cities where this is still a reality. And when we speak of political representation, the issue is really hot in Colombia. We're a week away from the first round for elections for president, and only 24% of parliamentarians on the planet are women in 2018. And this has been a small increment since 95, but during the last 4 years, this has increased a lot. So with this alarming issue, the planet has defined some goals everyone has to work on. And according to one of these objectives, which had to be defined by each one of the countries, where do they want to make a change? And this change is not only taking place through the state on a political level, but it's involving all the aspects of society. So us, you as entrepreneurs, me right now, as a university leader, each and every one of us has a small task to do in order to reach this better inclusion. There are 267 years that we're following the same rhythm in order to close this gap of gender. So maybe the planet will be over before because of global warming, or maybe the planet doesn't end, but human race will end before we reach equity. So let's think of perspective. 267 years is a long time. It's what has happened, more or less, since they realized that viruses and bacteria, the small bugs, let's say, made us ill. They discovered that if you washed your hands before you received a baby at birth, there would be less probabilities the baby would die. Something so obvious, especially after a pandemic, and that's more or less the time which has been going on since that discovery and the massification of portable computers. Let's put this into the world. This is a cipher which was given by the World Bank, because this is a discussion not only about principles or about an evident thing. Why don't we have the same opportunities? But it's also an economical discussion. If women would have the same incomes as men have along our lives, happens through opportunities, equal opportunities for men and women, we would be able to increase in $172 trillion. That means we could improve the productivity sustainable of reducing almost all social problems which we have nowadays. Now, if we look at different things, I wanted to give you this general vision so we could land it to see how we can break down these ciphers. Some years ago, exactly when I was working in Bogota, the mayor house, with the knowledge team, we started to play around with some data so we could understand where did we have to start moving and to focus our effort on this kind of politics. So we had a simple regression in which we saw what was the index of disequality, gender inequality from the UNPD, where different factors are being measured, linked to inclusion and equity for 154 countries, and we compare that with the women participation within working market. If there are more women working, there should be more equality, and it turned out this was not the case. Effectively, in the last more or less 60 years, it has the participation of women has increased in the world on the working field. And nowadays, a home where one of the women persons is working is an exceptional home. Oh, sorry, I have to clarify this. In Latin America, have a very high incision of women bringing in money to homes. In Colombia, almost a third part of the homes brings in the home through women. But what I wanted to say is that women nowadays and men have to work, and it's very difficult to keep a home without two incomes. So what we were seeing here is that not necessarily a better inclusion of women in the working world would become a greater equity. I just wanted to show you how this index is working. They are looking health, empowerment, labor market. There is a great impact on education. The years of scholarity of women, the more scholarity women have in years in a country, the development of this index in these different pillars would improve. Some examples which are kind of exceptional. I'm not telling you things we could generalize, but these are some examples, outstanding ones. Some of the crises were in minery in Zambia took us to redefine the roles, the principal gender roles in patriarchal society. In other cases, and this was generating some roles which we were really defined. And the crisis of the copper Minecraft, there was this carrying labors. Men were not working at the mines, so women had to go out to bring in commerce some other kinds of tasks. So they were not looking after the kids or the home or looking after food and so on. So this had their role genders to shift within the society, specifically in this area of the copper mining in Zambia. There was more equity than at the rest of the country. Another example, in 1974, Sweden was giving a paternity license as long as the motherhood license, and they were specifically promoting because men were not taking it because it was volunteer, but they were really pushing men to take the time of paternity license. And this has brought a change, a culture to take place, and it's expected that whenever a baby is born, a couple has a child, both parents will take the necessary time to look after children. This is in Colombia something which has been approved, a more flexibility with the paternity license. I am a great defender of the obligatory, the mandatory time for men to look after newborn babies. It's not willing, it's they need to take it and not give prizes to men who decide not to take paternity time. And one of the things that is interesting in this recent change in Colombia is that during the last 4 weeks of maternity license, you can do two things. One is to divide it, work half time during 8 weeks, and the rest of the time take care of the child and extend maternity license, or these 4 weeks can be taken also by the father or the partner of the woman who had the baby. So this is a small Zoom in Colombia. I know we are not mostly Colombian, but it's the context I know better. And what I want to show you is how data have evolved throughout time. If you don't know this book, it's a great book. It's free. It's from the Republic Bank. It's called The Path Toward Gender Equality in Colombia. And this is a graphic which you can see, which seems very complex, but what we can see in the left side is the amount of children and life expectation and the PIB. We can see the clear relationship between a greater improvement in life expectation. Sorry, I said something wrong. It's as if it's crossing how this life hope, which is this dotted line, maybe you're following with my mouse, and it's increasing when women start having less children. And we can see how whenever this amount of children goes down, and I believe to have children, it's an individual decision. I would have loved to have 5 children, but it started too late. But that's an individual decision. But in a more, if we could, whenever we could choose how many children we wanted to have, the life expectation of women started to go up in our countries. It started also to high school education went up in our countries. The general participation went up as well in the labor market. And there is a real cross where I can choose how many children I have and improvement of life quality in people. You could say, well, what happened is that life quality went better, and that's why women could start to choose on our bodies. I don't know how the relation is exactly, but they are totally related. And one of the shifts that has been in the 20th century, and that could be the point zero we had to build from, is that some learning taxes went up within women. Now we are equal with men, and this is something which counts as well for the rest. Now I want to go for the first question. Which one of these countries on this list do you think has a highest rate, fertility rate for 2020 higher than Colombia? China, Norway, Portugal, Brazil, or Chile? Someone saying Norway. Brazil, Chile, Brazil, Portugal. I'm seeing Norway, Ecuador, Chile. I want to tell you, give you some news on this. Most of you had said Brazil, China, and from this list, country list, the one which has the highest fertility rate is indeed Norway. There were 2 women who answered that. The global fertility tax is 2.4 for each woman. Colombia 178, Norway 183. They are 175, 167 in Brazil. We have, as a region, given some important steps facing this fertility tax, which is reflected on the decisions we want to have. Do we want to have children? Don't we? Do we want to be entrepreneurs or keep on studying? Do we want to work? Do we want to do another kind of project? And I think this has great freedom. I want to jump some slides because I would love to speak of unemployment and leave some space for discussions at the end. One of the worst things which happened during pandemic is that unemployment raised. We all went through this, we lived this, in the reactivation that has been a follow-up in all of our countries of unemployment. But one of the things which was really alarming is that feminine unemployment was the most hardest hit in Colombia in 2020, July, which was like the highest peak of the pandemic. The feminine unemployment reached 26.2%. When we look only within young women between 18 and 28 years, this rate went up further than 30%. So 30% of every 10 women was unemployed. And the thing is that in this age, it's a time when most women have their first child. So we didn't only have a crisis which affected the whole economy and distribution chains, which is something we can say now. If some of you are manufacturers, we have seen so many problems in delivery of main things to work. We have seen problems in logistical processes from all around the country, which has been really bad. We have seen how this has affected poverty, but the effect the pandemic had on young women was devastating. Not only because the most affected sectors were those which traditionally hire women in commerce, services, but because the taking care of children and elders, schools closed up, preschools closed up, the health centers for elders closed down, that there were great limitation, and this care task is falling on the shoulders of women, mainly of young women who are the most affected by this situation. And whenever this is a bit more complex situation, there are some pre-pandemic data from the Republic Bank, which is called unemployment, feminine unemployment in Colombia, which are the possibilities of a person starting from its personal situation, whether she has the gender, children, or a couple, to be unemployed. And we see that the highest amount of population which can go from being employed to being unemployed are women. Is this small line, which are women who are married or have a permanent partner, and women who are married with unemployed are those who have greatest risk of passing from employment to unemployment, and those who have less risk from this employment disemployment are men who were married with children, are the ones who are most probably to go from unemployment to employment, which is a terrible situation. And the highest possibility of going for a woman with children and married is in this height. So this part from 12 to 18 can be ignored, but between the 18 and 30 years, we have statistically our first child, which has been changing, and it becomes later and later to have our first child. But at this first point, we have more possibilities of going from employed to unemployed, and all the possibilities of being unemployed and becoming employed is behaving in the other way around for men. And we see how people who are heads of home in a couple and they have children, they can have more possibilities of finding a job, especially in this moment of greater fertility between 24 and 36, and women who are unmarried without children have less possibilities of making the shift. I wanted to share with you, make a zoom in the local thing, because one of the things which happens when we look at statistics is that when we look how many Ferraris do we have? Madonna has 2 Ferraris, I have 0 Ferraris, so we both have 1 Ferrari for each. That's a dumb thing of seeing statistics, but if we see globally these statistics, some details get lost. Is that disequality within countries are rooted deeper than disequalities between 2 different countries. Here we can see all the unemployment rates in different cities in Colombia. We see like cities in the border like Cúcuta have a highest unemployment rate this is a bit old, but if we go and look through it today, it's almost the same, double of the unemployment rate women have in Bogota. If we look at some other gender gaps in Bogota, in the labor task, I hope that it will go good because it's in Spanish and in English. And I see how depending on the education level, we also find some gaps, just like I said before, in Latin America and in Colombia. We have a longer education time, women than men, but there is a less portion of women with PhD, doctor, and masters, more women with specialization than women. I need to clarify something here, even in diversity, is that specializations are not necessarily adding value. Some of them are, of course, in some cases. But if you look at the movie generally of this post-degree, not always formal, um, on the academy are not always making an impact on the capacity of working for women. There are more women professionals than men, and less women in technical professional careers than men. In many of our countries, we have careers which generate a greater stability. You, we lose all stereotypes. Women are really carrying a lot in health sciences, in accountability. We're also almost all of us women, administration and economy. And here in our specifically case, we have accountability, which is almost feminine in Colombia, and administration, math and natural sciences. We have a bit more than 50%, but if we zoom in here, mathematics, we have more men in biology, we have more women, social sciences and human sciences, we have 50-50, agronomy and so on, mostly women, men. And as this goes up, the education level goes up, this gap goes down for men who have studied the same thing as women. So we have some very strong differences in salary, how much women are earning, and we have technological specialization. Remember that we're speaking of 77 global amount. So where is this taking us to? We have thousands of explanations. Some of us have been discussed now, or others you have read maybe. But one of the problems in this practical and most practical data of what is feeding inequality, time that people dedicate to care. So when this is being checked in some women, some countries like Chile, Mexico, and Colombia, we are looking at the time of people. What are we spending our time on? Women, we are working more or less 9.5 hours in a payable job and 5 hours, 40 minutes in non-paid work, while men are working 10 hours in paid work and 2 hours non-paid work. So here we can find the essence of the thing, or we can see which are the charges of the care issues, non-paid. You know that it's 9 in the morning, and I'm sure many of you made breakfast, prepared lunch, sent your kids to school, or had some conversation with an elder you are looking after, or at least on your through your mind, different caring tasks pass through your mind, which go from I have to go shopping or pick up the clothes, or I have to bring someone to the doctor, or take myself to the doctor, I need to buy a birthday gift. I'm sure in your to-do list of assisting to the conference and a meeting I have with a provider or with a client, on top of that, you have a list of caring tasks, which statistically we know that it's taking, duplicating the time that men have to invest on this. So then we ask ourselves, why do we need more inclusion of women? Why do we need more participation of women? Why do we have a discussion on this inequality And in the end, we are working of a time issue. So I wanted to put this reflection on the table.
Quería como darles unos tipsitos
I
sobre
wanted to give you some tips on what is happening within the organizations in Latin America. Here we have a gigantic trick on this discussion about equality and care. I know I have a great care thing to take care of, but from a privileged position, I can have somebody to support me with these tasks. It's not the government, absolutely never the government. We have a social disequality scheme which allows us to hire people to take care of the care tasks in our place, and they are delegating their care tasks to other women, and we create a small inequality chain, and in a small chain, this is positioning us really well in Latin America regarding the feminine participation in main board
de mujeres en posiciones
and
de
women participation in leadership tasks. In fact, Colombia, facing the rest of the women participation in the great corporations. And it's not because we have better equality policies, it's because this inequality scheme, in my specific case, Erica Spina is helping me to raise my two daughters so I can be here giving you a talk and having a meeting with a main committee or being in a head group or working with inclusion subjects or thinking on how we can put our women to become
yo dedicando
president in 4 years, and I'm spending time which I could be spending to things I know which are going on at my place, which is the care of the home. I wanted to give some questions, and I think once again, excuse me for the Spanglish, I have two reflections I've had lately on what we can do with all of this information. I gave you a lot of information which is high related more with public policies and organizations. How can we ground this into our daily work as entrepreneurs or within our enterprises or organizations we're working at? And I think one of the great problems we've had here is that whenever we speak of, oh, we have a diversity and inclusion problem, they say, okay, show me the numbers. The information and data which is available facing diversity will never be enough. Partly, as I said, it's a permanent
y que siempre va a haber una
task
nueva
which won't stop, and we will always find a new inclusion border. Whenever we have more feminine inclusion, we will ask ourselves, why is it these women and not the others? What are women who have been going through racism, who are diverse women from all over the country, even the women who have gender identities, which are diverse. Here we have a never-ending task, and the data are always missing and not enough. But this is not an excuse to stop doing the job, following
con la
up
información
the
disponible.
problem, and I know we can
Una
use
película
the available information, a trusting and serious movie on the inclusion situation. We are going from our enterprises, even if it's very small, to the greatest organization we are working at. We have to be creative in the way we analyze and our data and very honest on how we project this information. And once we have these pieces of information, for example, at the university, we're raising data from human resources regarding the teachers, the students, data on the kind of projects our teachers are developing, data on how we are facing these subjects at the university. And with all of these pieces, I can build a whole
realmente en esta
picture which
organización.
will allow me to see what is truly going on within the organization. And when I see this whole movie, which I could take from different pieces, I know
Específico de
how this is facing the whole context. In the AFIC, this is reflecting the region, the country, Medellin, the Poblado, which part of the universe are we reflecting within this microcosmos, which is our university? And then we find three questions I would love to put on the table, and if it's possible for us to have a small discussion during the last minutes. How can we have a greater information to know which are the standards and what do we need to focus on for inclusion within our organizations? If I have an enterprise, I do have actually a small one with Claudia Fuentes. How do we do to have a discussion on diversity within our organization, which is not as dumb as what is women participation? Well, it's you, me, accountable. Perfect, we're inclusive. But more, what kind of people are we hiring? What kind of projects are we going for? What kind of clients are we working with? So how can we have a standard which will allow us to know the kind of questions we need to ask ourselves within our organization? The second one is, should we all be activists? Sometimes I wake up and I say yes. Sometimes I wake up, I say no. Or particularly one day I woke up thinking we all should have a role of activism within our communities, our worlds, our surroundings as well. And I saw some comments of you saying we have to work against the patriarchal system. We have to change the way we think and unite. I absolutely agree with what you're saying. And this is the kind of thing where you can be an activist every day. It's not normal that at a job, a meeting, we let pass some sexist comments and you can stand up and say, hey, look, that's really not adding anything to this discussion we're having. It's instead distrust, trust and confidence. We don't have to let pass by things which make us feel uncomfortable. Don't need to reproduce gender stereotypes with the stupid idea that women have to be rivals between each other or enemies. We don't have to reproduce the worst part of the patriarchal system in the way how we participate or we lead. And one of the reasons why I woke up this morning thinking that we do have to be activists in our world, our space, our influence level, especially because I think that's what makes our lives to be better. And the last thing, thinking, some of you said there is no support for entrepreneur women. What kind of motivation do we need to give to entrepreneurs in the world so they will be more inclusive and diverse? Not long ago, in the exercise which Brigitte Baptiste was inviting, she's working very hard for these inclusion subjects. She's the head of the IAN University in Bogotá. She has been, she's a trans woman. She's fantastic, brilliant, with an incredible color to women. Whenever I have a meeting with her, my daughters tell me, please send me a selfie with her. If you're going to be with Brigitte, please tell her I love her. She's a rock star. In that exercise, she was summoning with universities from the whole country, and this was a real diverse exercise because there were people from the Amazon, from the private, most elitist universities to the regional, local universities, which are the most inclusive, and each one had to go through the exercise of going through the policies. And EAFIT, we had these policies of enterprising. And one of the things we found within these problems of promotion for entrepreneurship, it's not the problems because there's not enough money or because men or women don't know how to access these funding resources, but because there are some barriers on how to access this information. There are problems in active, productive networks. We know that, but two problems which we identified also the consolidation of networks where gender is a very important role. Women networks are very powerful. And the second one is a mentality change. If we have this mentality shift, it's not only towards entrepreneurship or having the capacity of enterprising, identifying opportunities, or who are the boys and girls who have this capacity, but also how this culture within entrepreneurship will be sustainable with a sustainability vision, which is very important. inclusivity and equity. This is what I want to share with you, to go through this information, parting from the planet, some examples from Colombia, some reflection on the use of time. And after these small conclusions to close, I don't know, Daniela, would it be possible to open up talk?
Gracias, Cristina. Pues sí, creo que
Thank you,
tenemos
Cristina. Yes, I think we have some time to answer some questions live.
no sé si
I don't
Catherine
know
me ayuda con
whether
los que tengan la
Catherine,
mano levantada.
maybe someone has raised your hand already.
Vamos a abrir el micrófono.
Now that
Sí,
you are
en este momento tenemos
open,
tres manos levantadas, entonces le vamos a dar la palabra en este momento a Elizabeth.
now we are going to give the word to Elizabeth Gonzalez, who has raised her hand. Go ahead, Elizabeth. Can you hear me? Morning. Can you hear me?
Perfecto. Escuchamos perfecto.
We hear you perfectly. I have something I would like to express. It's related to gender and women as entrepreneur, and I have been always fighting for gender. I have been very active and so on. And what I did was to implement in my women to have more women, young women with children. The problem which I face, and I have noticed it very often, sometimes I go into the role of man and I say, oh, that's why they don't hire men. It's because women, I feel they're always putting, have limitations with kids. My kid is ill, so they don't share the role with men, so they lose more working time. They're asking many more job. And this, how could we manage this issue? Because if we want to be inclusive, or we are an entrepreneur, so if we're looking at it from the point of view of entrepreneur, a person is working half time, evidently this is not sustainable. How would you recommend us to manage this subject?
Yo creo que aquí me acaban de regañar con
Think
toda la
here
razón,
they're
que estoy
asking
hablando muy
me
rápido.
to please go slower. I know I'm going very fast. I have a big problem as a good woman from Bogotá. I speak very fast, so I will make an effort to speak slower.
Elizabeth, hay un ejercicio que
Elizabeth,
se
there
llama
is an
el ranking
exercise
que lo
which is
maneja
called the ranking bar, which is led by Iguales, which is an enterprise. They're measuring yearly
¿Cuáles son las mejores prácticas de las
which are the
empresas para
best
generar
practices of enterprises
una de las
to
cosas
create inclusion.
que más
And
efecto
one of the
genera
things which
es
has greater effect
activamente promover
to
el trabajo en
actively
equidad entre los
promote
sexos.
the,
Porque
the,
esos
the
problemas
carrying
no van a salir,
tasks
es decir,
with men,
entregas de
because we
tareas
will
en el
always
colegio
find this
cada
kind of issues you
trimestre.
mentioned.
Los papás
Women
tienen
have to
que entregar
go
el dinero
to
a
pick
los
up the
hijos como
notes at
2 veces
school from
todos los años,
children. This
2
will
veces
happen
al año,
each time,
todos
2
los días de
years,
todos los años. Los niños se
yearly,
enferman,
so 4
hay
times a
accidentes,
year.
hay
Kids get ill,
problemas
there are
en
crises
las
at
escuelas,
home,
hay que
pets
arreglar luz,
die,
esas son
we
cosas
need
que
to
pasan
fix
en la vida.
plumbery. These are things which happen
Y
in real life.
digamos que el tema no es
So the issue
generar,
here
digamos,
is
como
not to generate,
o castigar a las mujeres por
to
tener que
punish
asumir esas
women
tareas,
because they
sino
have to assume
promover
these
que
tasks,
los hombres
but
lo hagan
rather
más
promoting that men
dentro de las
go do
organizaciones
this
donde
more
estén.
within
Desde eso que
organizations.
hacen
This is
como
something you
días
can
de días
do, even you can
domésticos o días
create
de salud
like
mental,
house
ese tipo de
working
cosas.
day or
Porque
health
tiene que ser hecho
mental
por
health
hombres que
day that
efectivamente
men could take
lo hagan.
and
Yo creo
really
que
take look after them,
en la
taking
forma como uno
them
define las
effectively.
políticas de la
So in a
organización
way where you define
puede,
the policies of
puede
an
generar también
organization, you can also generate
como un pequeña transformación en ese
a
microcosmos.
small transformation within this microcosmos. But only to give you a plus, let us remember that most of women who are here are starting. We are small or micro enterprises. So to create a system of support like daycare for children where women can be, this is a high cost which some of our enterprises cannot afford right now.
Por supuesto, es decir, incluso
Now, of course, it's not doable.
grandes que
But there
en
are
algún
many
momento de la
large
historia decidieron
enterprises where
implementar
at a
bienes
certain
infantiles
point decided to have
y
daycare,
recientemente las han
and
cerrado.
recently they have closed it because it's
Y uno no
too expensive, and you cannot expect a micro enterprise to solve a problem, a public problem, which is the care and attention for children. One thing that you could do, and I don't know in the specific case
jardines
where you are, there are some daycare or care centers which have specialized to offer services to enterprises. In Bogotá, we have Advenio, which is a case, which is a daycare, which is making links to enterprises, and you can pay a bid and co-finance that space for a woman. But I believe that discussion could go beyond and start thinking rather about flexibility within work as much as you can afford it and your business allows it, women to work from home. Before this was like the holy grail of discussion on equity, and pandemic showed us that this is something we can do in many cases. And the important thing is to have that same flexibility for men and women and really push men to take those spaces as well. And also in this dimension of being activists, as entrepreneurs, there are many things that we can say to the public care systems, mayor house, governments, regarding the importance of having a better care infrastructure for all, for men and women, and of course for children.
Listo, muchas gracias, Elizabeth.
Thank
Ahora
you
sí,
very much, Elizabeth. We will go now with Sandra Zapata's question.
Buenos días, ¿cómo están?
Good morning, how are you?
Yo tengo dos preguntas.
Well, I would like to ask
Me
two
ayudaras como
questions. I would like you to help me to know which
que no
credit lines we
necesitan
have for
requisitos
entrepreneurs, which don't
para
ask for
que
so
al fin y
many
al cabo nosotras todas las
things,
que somos
because
emprendedoras
most all of us
tenemos
who are
diferentes
entrepreneurs are
estudios,
women who are always married or living with their husbands, so
no
we never had
ingresos, entonces estamos
any
empezando,
incomes. We are only
no
starting
sabemos
and we don't
cómo
have
demostrar
how
los
to
ingresos.
demonstrate our income.
Aparte de eso, también me gustaría que me dijeras
Besides
el nombre
that,
de
I
las
would
actividades
love
que
you to
estás
tell me the
realizando
name of the
ahora,
activity
reconocer
you're
decirla y me
speaking
parece
of.
muy
I would like to follow her. I couldn't write her name. This problem I have of speaking so fastly. Sandra, I don't know all the financement ecosystem, I guess because of your accent, you're in Colombia. But I know that, for example, Banca Mia has been a great pioneer offering credit for entrepreneur women. I don't have anything to do with them. I don't know them. I don't know any details. I know also they are studying right now in the Fondo Nacional de Garantías an additional kind of credit for women. They have not released it yet, but they're discussing on that subject right now. And I know it's like the main problem. I would love to tell you I have the answer, but I don't have it. But I know that in Banca Mia, you can find an interesting income. With those things you are sharing with me, it's enough. I'm from Medellin, and I will call these banks to see how I can access these credits. In the normal, they're asking what kind of support of warranties you can receive from the Fondo Nacional de Garantías, which is a governmental organization. Always ask for that through the bank. Doesn't matter, Bancolombia, La Vivienda, or Banca Mia, regarding that. And I don't know, the mayors have usually credit lines, co-financed ones. I know you can find them in Bogotá. I'm not sure in Medellin, even though I live here. Yes, even last year, I live at Envigado. I went to visit some fund and I almost went into this seed credit. I am a victim from the conflict, armed conflict. I got 4 millions and I invested on clothes, but now I have too many people who are buying from me. I would like to have some more money to have a reaction capacity. Look for Banca Mia, and I will try to find, because I know there is a group of teachers who are working on this subject, I will ask around what you can find, and I will ask send you the information through the QI. The other question, what activist's name?
¿Me estabas diciendo?
The Iguales one or which one? Yeah, the one you said, which is a transgender. I would love to follow her. I will write it on the chat so everyone can look at it. Brigitte Baptiste, head of the EAN University.
Listo, gracias, Sandra.
Perfect, thank you,
Lorena
Sandra.
Lascano.
Lorena Lascano, you can go ahead with your question. Good morning to everyone. This topic is really interesting.
Una de las cosas que me
One of the things which worry me regarding this is the help we can receive as entrepreneur women from international organisms. Because here in Ecuador, in my country, I have tried to get some help for capital investment through banks and credit lines, which have been announced by the the Pichincha Bank in Ecuador, but it's the same as not having anything at all, because you go to the bank and the first thing they tell you is you need to have an account for 6 months at the bank, and then if you haven't sold a certain amount, you need to stick up to, forget it. That's for a group they want to give to. So any help, any bank is giving, it's difficult for an entrepreneur women to get there. And speaking about myself, a technical professional which with a stable business, it's even more difficult for a woman who doesn't have the same preparation conditions. They ask you, you have to have this, 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 and you have these limits. It's really bringing you down. It's difficult to come up. All the help which comes through the great organizations like the BINT or other funds which are giving money for entrepreneurs stays at the banks, and they are the ones who choose who they want to give this to. Banks are not supporting you in any way. What I imagine is that if the BIDs and these organizations really want to support women, they need to find other mechanisms like crowdfunding, I don't know, which will really reach the population who needs it, because banks keep it as a beautiful business for themselves, and that's it. In the specific case of being an activist, I don't share it at all. Why? Because it's losing my time. I'm not going to follow a line which is being given to me. I have to fight for somebody else because I need to eat. So I need my time to really do what I need to develop my brain and having what I need for my food tomorrow and the future. In my professional life, I have 25 years of experience. I have worked in different companies where, well, because I have a strong character, I was fired twice, one because of the commercial gerund, because he was not agreeing, because I was asking him to go out of my territory. And in the other one, because they were asking me to sell fake things. Woman, I have principal rights, I'm a professional, and I consider I'm equal to a man. A man is not more or less to me, it's a companion. It can be a life companion, a work companion. I studied my whole university 30 years ago with men, and the intellectual capacity is very similar. The only thing I need to strive in life. I don't need to fight to be an activist, to fight for anything at all, but to go on in life and have food on the table for my family tomorrow. I'm 56 years old, and I'm able to develop and to. What I need to do is to work. I don't need anything else. With my example, I'm giving example to my daughter and to all my surroundings. So those women who look at me know which path I'm following. I'm going to reach my goals to survive and to live. Because even though I have formed academically in a very strong way, since I went into the working field, discriminated in a sexist world, and I don't care. I just go on because you need to go on in life no matter what you find on your path. And that's what happens in my life. So I look for specific help I look for international organizations which help me to improve my life in a specific way that doesn't go through banks. Unfortunately, you can come and look at all the banks where all these international organizations have offered help. This is not real. It stays in the banks. It doesn't reach women it was meant to be for. And for example, me, I'm not in Connect Americas, I played for women, I'm in all the places and everywhere you find the self-effective help for women does get there. So what I would like instead is to find what kind of mechanisms could we find through Latin America in order to find real and effective help for women who are working. For me, it's interesting for me to get food on the table and raise my children. That's all I want. And this is what I'm teaching my family. The support I'm looking for in one or another way in these organizations like Play for Women or Connect Americas or the startups push-ups is this kind of help. Thank you. Lorena, I cannot answer facing these banks. I do not know your project. But in what you say, you are clearly a leader with an influence capacity, which is really high. Only by listening to you, it's really clear that you are a leader. So being an activist doesn't mean to, like the stereotype of the activist going to march at the main hall with a board. It's to create transformation in the world where you are giving an example, and that's clearly what you're doing. So I would not agree with you because it's flowing out of you. I really can see, perceive your leadership capacity. Thank you. What I have done is I have a life rhythm where I had the need of finding my own space, and I need to find my own space. So these are facts, because as an engineer that I am, I had to fight not 8, but 12, 14, 16 hours. Doesn't matter whether you have children or not, because when you're considered as a man, that's how I learned to be seen as a man. I knew someone had to help me, my mother, or someone would help me with my daughter. And I had to work for 10, 12, 14 hours. And if I couldn't, during the first months after I gave birth, I stopped working. And I was just 8 months with her, and then I went back. But the rhythm is so high, demanding when you're an engineer, also because of society in Ecuador. You have to work 10, 12 hours non-stop sitting because you stand up and leave, you can be fired. It's bad scene. This is not fair. I should be able to work 8 hours a day. And if I can work 8 hours here, should be able to go to another enterprise and improve my salary. That's why I'm an entrepreneur, because I don't fit in all the stereotypes which pre-exist. And I have ideas which I am putting into actions for several years, which allow me to strive and survive in a difficult world, because the world by itself is complicated. But if you're an engineer and you're a woman, depending if you are not in a transnational company, which will really value your service, if you're in a female or a medium company, it's a disaster. This is not going to work. If you're in a large transnational company, it's great because they will value the task of the woman. But if you meet a chief who is sexist and you shake his floor, he will do anything to make you from there. And for example, someone with my character, I'm very straightforward. Maybe I won't say the politically correct things. And when you do that in a man surrounding, they will finish you, they will take you out, because they cannot stand in their heads that someone will confront them equally. But my preparation at the university was, you are one more. They didn't consider me as a woman. You were another one from the species. So I didn't live with limitations. I learned to say what I think. And in the normal world, where women is always nice and silent, it's much more difficult to go along with it. I believe that this in my case, is also
Bueno, Lorena,
present.
muchas gracias por compartir.
Thank you,
Y
Lorena,
ahora
for
vamos a
sharing
seguir
with
con
us.
Patricia.
We'll now go on with Patricia. Good morning.
Patricia, no te estamos escuchando. Ya.
We can't hear you, Patricia.
Listo.
I was saying thank you very much. I'm going to speak fast so I can express myself. Firstly, it's great to listen to you. I'm a researcher, and through the years, I've been treating this whole gender issue, and at the end of my activism, I realized I cannot go on researching. I need to apply results and apply them in processes where it's needed. Secondly, the supports in our countries, from what I see, it's the same thing. We need to reach out to external processes and organizations which will allow us to reach to this support. And in the same line of what my companions were saying, let's work in networks so we can push up ourselves, each other, so we can access these helps and go on in life. And three, we have been developing a project which is called Banca Alimentaria in a depressed area of Bogotá, and we have been helping women throughout the country through private enterprises, which are supporting us as a group. So the first thing I would like to say is that it's not about working against gender, but with gender, including it in the process. It's not about me taking the boy or the child to the doctor. One day me, one day you. That's what we try to promote in this process we're doing. Whenever you're hiring someone, we also invite the husband to come over and to create a company process. It's taking more time, but it's giving us greater results so they can realize that economy comes from both and it's part of the home. And this is a challenge for women by themselves who are raising children by themselves in America, Latin America, and Colombia. In that sense, this network should work. There are ways where associative processes of women enterprises, which allows us really to empower ourselves. So the invitation is not fight against, but make them part of the process whenever they want to, and to definitely the networks, support networks, just like when we are having a personal problem, when it's the same thing when we are empowered on a labor task. And finally, empowerment. I've been fighting against this because empowerment is to be a wife, a mother, a daughter, being a sister, a friend, all the roles which exist and can exist, but when you say to the other gender, empower yourselves, they will say, yes, but how? Because not everyone is willing to do that. And that's a problem of Latin American women we are going through. All of us to understand that we all have the capacity of developing ourselves and improving and accompanying each other within this process. It's not about an activism of taking arms in hands or taking over the houses, but developing inclusion processes, economical processes starting from the collective work. That's what I want to add. Cristina, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I have a meeting right now. Thank you very much for this space. This is helping me to think of these subjects, to give this kind of talks so I can improve my arguments. I'm very sorry for the interpreters for the speed I was speaking on. I'm sorry. It's one of the problems I have to improve. And thank you very much for inviting me to this powerful space. Thank you very much, Cristina, for all the information you have shared with us today. It gives a lot to think of, to reflect on, to say within our organizations and enterprises. I think we already sent you the link for Cristina's, if you want to LinkedIn, follow her, connect with her. This recording will be available as always on the platform of Conecta Americas. It will be available for you to look again in all three languages. And for any question, you know, you can write to us, Conecta Americas. And thank you very much for joining us today. Have a beautiful rest of the day. Greeting to all of you.